The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it Mondays here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing all right. Missed you. Was anxious to get back at it today. Excited to be back. Big thanks to Elijah. Big thanks to Will Wilson. And thanks to all of you for checking us out. Can always find the show, follow us, like, and subscribe. Hail Varsity YouTube channel, also Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Can watch that way at H Varsity Radio. A lot to get to. A new member on the Nebraska football staff from Lee Summit North. Senior football assistant. That's Coach Jamar Mosey. We'll have some thoughts on that. We'll dive into Bryson Webber. Good get for the Big Red despite the transition in the secondary. And we'll get the countdown going, man, as we're a week away from flying out to Big Ten Media Days for Tuesday and Wednesday sessions next week. But plenty of football to dive into. 489-1240, 489-1240 to dial up. Can email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com, and always listen along the Hail Varsity Radio Network. A lot going on over the weekend just in the country itself, and a pretty surreal moment in Pennsylvania. And that was something that, sports aren't important. Life is obviously super important, and that was crazy to see over the weekend, just to acknowledge that. And, of course, you got baseball all-star break going on, so a pause there with Mr. Skeens taking the hill. Good day for Nebraska baseball in the MLB draft, and a good day for Cale Fountain as well, the career home run leader in high school baseball for Nebraska. Heard his name called, so pretty big Monday. We'll dive into it. Elijah, how are you doing? It is good to see your smiling, mustached face. I have ate a lot of steak. I've lost a lot of golf balls, but I have enjoyed myself between the sweet little course in Cambridge, Nebraska, Wild Horse in Gothenburg, and then a course I go to in Milford. Did that, took Junior golfing. It's funny, I've taken him to the range because Junior wants to get into golf, but Junior just hasn't golfed a lot. So we're working on that slice to the right. He's got a big golf outing with his girlfriend's stepdad, Wednesday. That it is at Tiburon, where I actually hurt my ankle. So I think Junior, to rub it in my face, is going to get a posed picture by the infamous, it's not the green monster, but it is the retaining wall next to the putting green. But lots of steaks, lots of golf, lots of sunshine, and lots of hopping around. So thanks for letting me do that.
Yeah, for me it was a lot of work. No, I had a good week without you. It was our good friend Will Wilson's always good spending time with him.
Had a great week without you.
I said good.
Go away more often.
I said good, okay? Don't put words in my mouth.
No, but the way
great has a connotation.
The tone was, I had a good week without you.
Well, I'm saying we had fun despite your absence. And it's good to have you back. I will say that. It's good to be back with old pals. I will say, I'm a little bummed I'm here instead of playing NCAA football right now. I'm getting texts from all my friends telling me how awesome it is.
Right,
yeah.
Pre-order.
Yeah. So my roommates are at home playing right now, and I am stuck at work, which is concerning because I'm going to get home and they're going to wipe the floor with me.
At Herbal Essence, where you can follow Elijah on Twitter, and you've got your fold-up chair in front of the flat screen. You posted on Twitter.
Yeah, I wish that was actually my picture. It is not. No, my living room looks much nicer than that. But that is how I'm going to be feeling here whenever I'm locked in on this game. It is no distractions. I'm going to lock the phone away.
You're just going to go to work.
Going to go to work. It's time to rebuild. I've been discussing this plenty. My grand plan in life is, first and foremost, you're going to hop on and rebuild Nebraska. That's like the number one goal here. That's going to be cathartic after the last 10 years to get them right. I think I'm going to go with a custom-made iteration of that Coastal Carolina pistol triple option offense.
Okay.
I'm gonna
talked a little bit about that Saturday weekend edition.
Yeah, going to customize it a little bit. I've been looking at the playbooks just a little bit and some of the options. I think I'm going to dive into that just a little bit. I haven't quite decided on the defense just yet. I might stick with the 3-3-5 just because Nebraska's already got the pieces for it in place. But once you get that right, then you're going to go hop on, be a coordinator at a big school, and start the coaching grind that way. Really looking forward to the NCAA football game this week, though. I know a lot of our listeners probably could care less, and that's fine, but it's what I'm excited for.
Some love it, some are not in. I get it.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'm looking forward to that. Other than that, just looking forward to a good week. It's inching closer to football season, and at least we have lots of news to talk about here. It's a bit of a rare mid-July news dump that we've had over the past week and a half or so. So plenty of stuff to talk about. It's making the time go a little bit quicker, and you're going to blink, and before you know it, it's going to be fall camp getting going. You're going to be in Memorial Stadium watching a practice, and then you're going to be counting down the days to UTEP.
No, Bryson Webber, big-time get for the Big Red. Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska Rivals, with us in about 10 minutes or so. We'll get his take, also the want and wish list, plus his reaction to Mosey joining Nebraska staff. Let's get our starting five shout-outs going. Mr. Snitley is in. Jeff Snitley is first, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. We'll have some comments from Paul Feinbaum. I know SEC Media Days are going now, but he pulled the pin on Prime and the Buffs. You'll want to hear that here in about 20 minutes or so. Jeff is excited. NCAA football is back. Nebraska will be champions again. Good on you, Jeff. Jimmy is in. Uncle Jimmy is here. Crazy Spider Adventures checks in as well. Michael, good to have you. Justin is here. The other Dave checking in as well. Shout out, happy birthday wish out to Super Dave Gregorius, legendary Husker fan, Big Abdul Muhammad guy. He is blowing out more candles today than he would have blown out yesterday. We'll just leave the age thing there. KG, good to have you back. Brian Snitley is asking how mud volleyball went.
Yeah, got to see the Snitleys out there.
Did they pour a drink for you?
No, so I couldn't drink on Saturday because I was umpiring that night. And
is that a rule, or is that just an Elijah rule?
Did you know how hot it was on Saturday? It's a dehydration, my own safety kind of thing here. So I was drinking waters all day. Thank you very much. Mud volleyball went well. The team went 2-3. Which was slightly disappointing, but we gave it our all. Eliminated by a team of middle-aged people, which is always a little bit rough to stomach, but it was good.
Wow.
Have a rough sunburn on my back going because I applied sunscreen myself on my back.
Needed someone to get you.
And then right before the first game, I had somebody spray me down on the back, and that washed off in the first game, I'm pretty sure. So I have some of the grossest looking tan lines you've ever seen on your back, sunburn lines you've ever seen on your back right now, where like my shoulders are kind of fine. And then like a little, there's essentially like a mountain-looking thing in the center of my back where I could not reach with my own hands that is now burned into a line. So that's going to look great at the pool for the rest of the summer. But other than that, mud volleyball went very well. Umpiring went very well on Saturday night. And at the end of the day, no dehydration, no heat exhaustion to speak of. So that's a win, despite the hot day on Saturday.
Patrick is in. KG, I don't waste time or money on video games. I invest my money in sure things like dog racing again. Anonymous is in. Word from the inside is that Raiola has the third strongest passing arm in program history behind Johnny Mitchell. Left-handed Johnny Mitchell, right-handed Johnny Mitchell. That's right. Johnny was ambidextrous. Cliff is in. Cliff, good to have you down in Florida. Broderick is here. Eat beef. Coach Brandon, the real Matthew, and Tuck. Tuck, good to have you in, man. So thanks for checking out. What the hell's going on with Twitter?
Apparently they've made some sort of update. So
yeah, the update is not video.
But that being said,
go to YouTube.
You can go to YouTube, or if you go to our Twitter account, there's a link to the live show on YouTube as well. So we're not getting the usual live streaming on Twitter as we usually would today, Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it. I'll still keep calling it Twitter. But the option is still there. If you check out the Hail Varsity Twitter page at Varsity Radio, give it a follow. You can still find the live stream. We hope to have that issue resolved by tomorrow, if not at some point today.
That's garbage.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Kind of like the Twitter part, man. That's good.
Shout out Elon for ruining this for us.
Well, he might fix it, right? He's been known to have a day or two, and then it's back to normal. Is that fair?
I would hope.
Let's spend a minute here on Bryson Webber, the commitment. Nebraska able to get a really pretty rangy guy at 6'2", Missouri City, Texas, Ridge Point, whereas he's out of. 3-star quarterback, and Nebraska loves body types. They love athleticism. They love that quick twitch. They love the toughness as well. And when I think of TCU and I think of Utah, both those programs have had really talented back ends. So you kind of go to that peer recruiting part first. And for Nebraska to get a kid out of Texas is good because you want Texas talent. But Nebraska, they were the first to offer. They continued to visit and stay on top of with where Webber was at. And then you had a little bit of a pause with Evan Cooper and his resignation. So Nebraska able to follow up, though, Elijah, and make it happen. And this kid's a guy that Nebraska really liked and evaluated and identified early, and then they built the relationship. And he's a guy with his size that you really love the ability to be in space and cover, but also bring that thump downhill when it comes to trying to stop the run.
Yeah, and I don't want to downplay him as an athlete because he's got that verified track speed that we know Matt Rule and his staff likes. He's got great frame that you can build upon at almost 6'3" at the cornerback position, which is very NFL prototypical if you're looking at that from a projectable standpoint. But I think the biggest win here is the fact that we spent some time on this show last week talking about the loss that Evan Cooper is in recruiting. Not just his evaluation, but also his ability as a closer to go down and get kids like this that are interested in Nebraska to be Nebraska commits. That's one of the things we talked about with Evan Cooper. It's one of the things he was very, very good at. And for Nebraska to lose that last week and Evan Cooper and to still lock up this commitment is, I think, the bigger win. And I'm not trying to downplay what Bryson Webber is as the athlete because I do think he's very projectable and I think he's going to be a solid player. Projection's a little bit hard to do in college football, as we have found out over the past decade, but with what we've already seen from Matt Rule and his staff and their ability to develop, and for him to be stepping into this defensive back room under an acclaimed NFL defensive backs coach, John Butler, you like it. But I think it's an even bigger win for you to turn around after the fallout from Evan Cooper, who's one of your best recruiters, one of your best talent evaluators, the guy who was down there being the primary recruiter on Bryson Webber through much of this recruitment. For you to turn around and still lock up that commitment, I think is an even bigger win because there's concerns about what Nebraska can do recruiting-wise without Evan Cooper. It's going to be an adjustment you can make. And to still be able to lock up this commitment even after that, and I know Nebraska was in the lead before the Evan Cooper news. They're still in the lead apparently now that you lock up the commitment. But from an optics point of view and from a momentum point of view, that's a good commitment to pick up just to kind of let all the other recruits out there know. And I think Webber's a part of that, hey, yeah, we lost a recruiter in Evan Cooper, but we're going to keep on trucking. It's a positive development from the staff in that sense. I think that might even be bigger than the pickup of Webber as the athlete. And I think he's a really solid athlete. He's a really solid addition for this team.
No, you nailed it. I mean, optics and then just flat-out ability is what you got to have, right? I mean, it's a perception game, but you got to be good on the field. And Cooper's, I should say, Webber's a guy that can fulfill that, and it's another really talented body. Real quick to Jamar Mosey. Listen, I know he's got one kid that's at Oregon, another kid that's being recruited heavily as a 4-star wide receiver. Sure, you want to bring this guy in and hope the son follows. Great. But overall, listen, Nebraska over the years, and you got to go years and years back, but old Coach Milt and Coach Dan Young and Coach Solich, all three of those guys were excellent high school coaches in the state of Nebraska, and it kept Nebraska talent, it kept the walk-on program, it kept Nebraska able to be informed and heavily evaluate the in-state talent for years that is and was the backbone of Nebraska football when they're winning 10 and they're going 10-2 every year or playing for championships, right? That was a decision by Coach Osborne that really paid off, bringing in high school coaches at the GA level, and then they got elevated to longtime assistants. With this unlimited roster opportunity with a senior football assistant spot for Mosey, you want to be in the 500-mile radius. You want to be in that Kansas City region, but also just the contacts. And listen, Mosey, Gus Malzahn's a guy who climbed the ladder from high school that, boom, jumped into the coordinator position with some pretty high-profile spots before killing it himself. Kind of got wronged at Auburn, but he's righted it at Central Florida. So you've got a guy that's got some college experience now in Mosey after spending a season with Gus. But you also have those Kansas City ties. And aside from your home state, you want to be great in the Kansas City/state of Missouri or that Kansas region where you can go get a lot of talent. We talked to Brandon Kenny a lot. You look at Malik Collins. You think of some really
twins.
One more time.
Davis
twins. Right. I mean, just you can throw out a name that was Kansas City good, and you want to be that again in the city of Lincoln for Nebraska football.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We'll check in Tim Verghese inside Nebraska Rivals. Up next, a recruiting hit with Hail Varsity, and we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We should be getting some things figured out and fixed up here so the show can continue to stream live on Hail Varsity Radio Twitter at HVarsity Radio, Hail Varsity YouTube, where you can catch the show right now. As always, Tim Verghese with us from inside Nebraska Rivals.com. Tim, thanks for taking a few minutes, man. Good to spend some time. How are you?
Not too bad. Excited to be back.
It is good to be back. We both had a little breather last week, and college football does not pause, does it? And it doesn't pause in the state of Nebraska. I want to start, Tim, with Jamar Mosey and your reaction and how it could pay off and how it may pay off for Nebraska football as he's added as a senior football assistant.
Yeah, this was news that was really surprising. Probably the second most surprising thing that's happened in the last week or so, but surprising nonetheless.
Second.
But surprising nonetheless. And with Jamar specifically, obviously from the football standpoint on the field, had some valuable just winning experience as a guy that in the last 3 years kind of helped lead a turnaround in that Lee Summit North program. He's been there for 8 years, and he inherited a team that had won 4 games over the last 4 years before he got there. Then since he got there, they've been consistently getting better year by year. They lost a combined 5-6 games over the last 3 seasons. This is a guy that knows how to win. He's especially best on the offensive side, but he was hired at UCF on the defensive side of the ball, so kind of curious to see where he fits in at Nebraska. Obviously, though, on the recruiting side of things, this does give Nebraska, obviously, his son is 4-star wide receiver Isaiah Mosey, who's currently committed to Oregon. Gives Nebraska that bit of a leg up there. UCF didn't recruit Isaiah, even though they had Jamar on staff, and it was for a couple of different reasons. From what I've been able to gather, the UCF staff was somewhat aware that if a spot at Nebraska came open, Jamar would be interested in going closer to home, and this sounds like something that's been quietly in the works for a bit. So they didn't invest in Isaiah's recruitment, but that doesn't mean that Jamar's not going to recruit his son. I think now that he's at Nebraska, a school that's been recruiting his son for some time, you're going to see Nebraska get a lot more involved in that recruitment. And, this is about as I'm writing it up in a piece for tomorrow, but this is about as good of a chance as Nebraska will have there.
It's Tim Verghese with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, talking some recruiting. Jamar Mosey, the new coach in the boat for Matt Rule. And as you zoom out, I know Isaiah Mosey would be a big catch, Tim, but just generally recruiting the Kansas City area, how are the reports on how Matt Rule has been doing down there thus far, and what kind of, addition do you think Jamar Mosey makes in that in general? What kind of instant impact can he make in terms of boosting Nebraska's recruiting acumen there?
Nebraska's done, at least put in the effort there so far under Matt Rule, at least to get into Kansas City. You know, they make the rounds in that city. You know, they've got good relationships with coaching staffs in that city. But adding Mosey, you know, beyond obviously what this means for Isaiah, this does mean a lot for the city. You know, this is a guy he's a well-respected head coach that was there, that won a lot of ball games. You know, beat a lot of teams in the state, like earned that respect, you know. And so this is a guy that, you know, has produced some top talent. Caden Green, who's now in Missouri, he's their starting offensive tackle. He came from that Lee Summit program. Williams and Ranieri was the number one player in the country last year, number one defensive lineman at least. He came from that program. He's also at Missouri. So this is a guy that knows talent, that has made the rounds in the recruiting circles in Kansas City. He knows what he's doing there. This definitely gives Nebraska like an extra voice and a really good connection to that city, especially, you know, that talent's really improving. Looking ahead to 26, 27, 28, they're going to have to stay invested in Kansas City because of the talent that's going to be coming up there.
Tim Verghese with us, Rivals Inside Nebraska, at Tim Verghese on Twitter. So tell me what you think about this dynamic. When you look at the opportunity to go play for Matt Rule and a coach you're familiar with in Mosey versus the dynamic of where Missouri is at on the college football landscape and how well they've been performing. It's quite frankly an ace if you're Nebraska you want, because you just laid out the talent that's gone to Mizzou, that's gone to Columbia. At least you've got a fighting chance now. And then you couple that with potentially some wins on the field for Nebraska. This makes too much sense to not do, correct?
Oh, correct. You had to do something, again, like something that Missouri's always going to have in their back pocket that Nebraska just won't have when recruiting that state is the University of Missouri is allowed to pay NIL to high school seniors that sign with the program, in-state seniors specifically. And so that's just something that anyone trying to recruit the state of Missouri can compete with the Tigers with. So this is the type of move that, hey, you know, not necessarily checkmate because you have to win here, but hey, you know, we've got something in our back pocket too when we're coming into Kansas City and we're trying to steal guys out of your state. When we're coming into Illinois or into St. Louis and we're trying to steal guys out of your state. You know, we've got a guy that has relationships in this state, has relationships specifically in Kansas City. This gives Nebraska a bit of an edge there. We have to see how this plays out, you know, in terms of recruiting wins.
It's Tim Verghese with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Tim, I want to switch gears here and talk Bryson Webber, the corner from out of Missouri City, Texas. Matt Rule's had a connection to Missouri City, and he picks up another one. It's a connection that goes back to his Baylor days, really. And despite all the Evan Cooper drama, which is probably the number one most surprising news from Nebraska media over the past 10 days, Nebraska's still able to pick up Webber. What's your reaction to Webber, what type of athlete he is, and what he brings to the field for Nebraska?
Yeah, you know, Webber as a player, really going to be, you know, somewhat of a developmental prospect. He's a wide receiver turned cornerback. He's only had 1 year of experience at corner. You watch his film and you would talk to the kid. Like, you know, he mentioned, like, hey, last year I was primarily relying on athleticism over instincts in making these plays. I want to improve my instincts, and I spent a lot of time this offseason doing that. So he's putting in the work, but you watch the film, and this is a kid that just, like, needs some time, you know, just getting reps on the defensive side of the ball to kind of pick up those instincts. And, you know, he's doing the work to get that done now, but needs some time. And I think you look at what he brings to Nebraska specifically, 6'3" corner, elite track speed, you know, like really good times in the 100, 200 meter. Ridgepoint as a whole is one of the more prominent track programs in the state. And, you know, he ran an anchor, or not the anchor, but he ran a leg on their 4x100 and 4x200, both of which made made Texas State this past year. And so a guy with good track speed, and he's more than just a track athlete. He flips his hips really well, accelerates, decelerates really well. At 6'3", too, it's just really impressive movement skills. He's a guy that, like, is very, very natural in man coverage. Just those instincts will need to improve, and that'll come in time. On Nebraska's end, a really impressive win, just in the sense that this was pretty much in the bag under Evan Cooper. Really, like, this wasn't even a question. But then Cooper leaves, and this was one of the few recruitments where Cooper was the primary recruiter and no one else was super, super involved. But the staff did get super involved, kind of leading up to that Cooper news coming out of his official visit. But leading up to that Cooper news, the staff stayed involved. Once Cooper departed, the staff continued to stay involved. And even some current commits, they were reaching out to Bryson being like, hey, man, just because things have changed with your position coach, nothing's changing with what Matt Rule's building, with what Tony White's building. This is all going to stay the same. And so you should come here. And, this is still like your home. And so they did a good job of maintaining the message even when Cooper departed, because it got interesting for a bit there. Once Cooper departed, it made things a little interesting, but Nebraska able to kind of calm, that situation down and able to reel him in, I think is really, really impressive.
Tim, let's spend a minute here on the recruiting landscape. I know that Michael Terry continues to have a high spot for Nebraska in the midst of some other major opportunities. Christian Jones, and then, of course, the top OT, Sanders, Nebraska making his Final Four. And reaction to that, what's the word around the campfire with Nebraska in the race for these guys?
Yeah, so, if you asked me a month or two ago how to stack those races, specifically Michael Terry and David Sanders, in terms of which one was actually somewhat realistic for Nebraska, I would have had Michael Terry over David Sanders. Unfortunately, I think the latest I've heard with Michael Terry is this one coming down to Oregon and Texas, unfortunately. It was always going to be tough to beat in-state Texas, and Texas at one point shot themselves in the foot a little bit with how they were projecting him in terms of the position he was going to play. But they've maintained they've been able to right the ship there. And just being the hometown team, or the close to home team, being the team he grew up rooting for, it's always going to be tough to beat them. And on the other side, Oregon, just the way Oregon is on the recruiting trail right now, it's really tough to beat them. And he made 2 visits back in June, both really impressed. And I think both sides really came to fall in love with each other to the point that he's like, hey, we can't, like Oregon specifically, is like, we've got 4 wide receivers committed right now, but we need you. So it's to that point where they really want him. Unfortunately, I think it's coming down to those two. Texas A&M is out. Nebraska lurks, but Nebraska's really pretty much kind of squeaking out of this one, unfortunately. That's not to say this one's done. I think he's going to announce a commitment before the season, but I get the read that, with a couple of these guys, Nebraska has a good year. They could get back in there. Sanders, on the other hand, I think it'll be that last weekend of July is going to be really telling. He's supposedly thinking about making some last-minute visits to get a look at some schools for the final time before an August decision. If Nebraska gets one of those visits, I think they've got a really good shot. Not a really good shot, but they'll have a real chance there. But as of right now, I think everything just hinges on that final July weekend. As of now, they're running 4 out of 4, of that top 4, but they have a chance to kind of make up some ground if they can get him in town the last weekend of July.
Is that open practice for the fans going to be the David Sanders NIL fund?
Oh, yeah. They're definitely going to not advertise it like that, but if you want to know where that money's going, it's for that.
Give till it hurts. If you're a Nebraska fan, Tim, I've got a hard break. I want to get your take on a couple more topics on the other side. If that's okay with you, we'll take you another 5 minutes or so. Can you hang on?
Yes, sir. Of course.
All right, Tim Verghese with us. Excited to spend another Monday with Tim, get his excellent insight when it comes to the world of recruiting for Nebraska football. And we'll have a little bit more on the other side here with Tim Verghese. Find the show on YouTube, Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Soon be back on video when it comes to our Twitter account, Hail Varsity Radio, at HVarsity Radio. More with Tim Verghese. Hail Varsity continues, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
So the real Matthew dives in. On Saturday, we were talking about smoked bone-in ribeyes that were amazing. Shout out Coach BP of Gretna East. He had me in Cranack over. We'll get to the steak smoker topic in a moment, but first recruiting.
You almost got distracted there.
No, I'm going through the comments. Keep the comments coming on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Tim Verghese, kind enough to give us some overtime. here on the Monday hit. Tim, of course, with Rivals and Inside Nebraska. Tim, your takeaway, since we haven't talked, on John Butler. We all know how important and impactful Coach Coop has been with Rule in his career. You had to move quick, and Nebraska played out well, official late last week. And what have you been able to glean from Coach Butler?
Yeah, just from looking through his resume, talking to some recruits that have already heard from him, talking to some players on the team that have already listened to him, and kind of just gaining an insight for who he is. A very, very strong hire, all things considered, especially this late in the cycle, like the fact that, one, he was available, and two, Nebraska was able to get him to come back. Because just a few months ago, he parted ways with the Bills kind of in search of a defensive coordinator position, tried his hand at a couple of those, was trying to grow his career in a different direction. To see him kind of take a step back and kind of decide this is a place for him and go to Nebraska is, I think, really interesting. And kind of I'm curious to get his thoughts when we get him in his first media availability of kind of where he thinks he is in his journey now and what Nebraska kind of means to that journey. Because you look at the resume, and this is a guy that's done a really good job of developing, with the Bills, they've had success just all through that secondary, in terms of takeaways, in terms of pass defense, but also in terms of getting the most out of players. Teron Johnson is a guy there that I believe he was a back half of the draft pick, and kind of developed into their reliable nickel corner. They've gotten all-pro appearances out of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. Tre'Davious White was an all-pro for them. He's done a really good job of, even beyond those guys, just developing some of the lower-round draft picks. DeMar Hamlin started before he got hurt, as everyone remembers. But before that, he had started 13 games, as a sixth-round pick for them. So they've done the most of getting talent up to speed. And, talking to recruits that talked to him or had heard from him, they rave about his ability to connect with them pretty early on. That was a question I had. This guy hasn't recruited in over a decade. How is he going to be with high school kids? So far, it's been okay. They've really liked kind of just how authentic he's come across. And more than anything, though, what's impressed them is he's had a plan for these guys. Individually, he has a plan for how they would potentially fit into the room, how they fit into the defense. And he has a plan for the secondary as a whole, kind of something he's going to inherit into his own vision. And I'm really curious to kind of see that take shape. He doesn't have a whole lot of time, but see how that takes shape kind of in the fall and how much, if any, that DB culture changes.
It's Tim Verghese with us here. You can find him and follow him on Twitter at Tim Verghese and check out his work with Rivals as well. And Tim, a little bit earlier today, you reported a visit that's coming up from Nebraska later this month. It's a California four-star athlete, Brandon Arrington. He's got a laundry list of offers. I think Alabama has offered recently. If I remember correctly, I think Georgia has offered as well. He is a speedster, and he's going to be in town at the end of the month. What are you hearing about Arrington, and where does Nebraska stand in this recruitment?
Yeah, this one's kind of just getting started. He, for the most part, up until this final weekend of July, kind of stuck closer to home, made some visits to USC and UCLA. San Diego State's right down the street from him. He's been there a couple times already. But, yeah, the likes of Texas and Georgia and Alabama and Notre Dame and so many more, Oklahoma, so many more are now involved. What's working in Nebraska's favor here and what I think is going to give Nebraska some staying power here is Tony White's kind of taken this recruitment on personally since Arrington was a freshman. This is a guy that's a 2026, just entering his junior year. But Tony White's made it a point to stop by and see him twice. He saw him at his last school, Helix, back in 2023. And then this spring, he stopped by Mount Miguel, where Arrington is now, to go see him. So it says a lot that, White is taking this recruitment on so personally. They've got a vision for him. They've kind of sold him on, hey, if you come to Nebraska, you'll be a DB here, but you also contribute on special teams. That's something you really want. He's also, he is the state champion in the 100-meter and 200-meter. He wants to run track at the next level. Nebraska's already told him, that's going to be an option here. And when he makes his visit at the end of the month, he's sandwiching that visit in between trips to Oklahoma and Alabama, but when he's in Nebraska, they're going to talk to him about the track program, how he fits in there, probably have him talk to guys like Jalen Lloyd and Jeremiah Charles that have done this, and kind of show them, like, hey, you're not the only guy we're planning this for. Like, we hope to have multiple guys, playing football and running track, or at least participating in track, and you can be the next great one to do it. So I think for him specifically, he hasn't known much about Nebraska beyond his relationship with Tony White, but the love he's kind of seen on social media has actually caught his attention a lot, and so I think Nebraska is going to gain some serious staying power through this visit and through just the fact that the fans are engaging with him on social media.
Tim, last thought, bud, and thanks for your time today. Auburn, Nebraska, Oklahoma, in the orbit of Christian Jones. You have a late July visit to Miami on the books. How big a threat could the Canes be?
I'm curious to see how that visit goes. It's for me, it's all about with him specifically. So what he's saying after the visit, the Auburn visit kind of came and went, and there wasn't a whole lot of buzz. He seemed to like it, but I don't get the feeling that unless they get 2-3 more visits out of him, I don't think Auburn's that serious of a threat there. Oklahoma, on the other hand, he went there, and I kind of had a feel that him and Brent Venables would kind of fall in love with each other just because of their personalities and their love for the linebacker position, and that's what happened. These guys, both those guys, kind of came out of that weekend really impressed with one another and wanting to know more about each other. I think Oklahoma's emerging as the biggest threat to Nebraska. Miami, I don't know. Knowing what I know about Christian and knowing what I know about Miami as a program, I'm curious to see if the two personalities gel, specifically the defensive guys on that staff and him, does the vision they have for the defense translate to what Christian wants from his career? I think conferences could start to factor in here. I think he starts to see the separation between the SEC, Big Ten, and everyone else, and Miami being an ACC school right now, I don't think that plays super well in their favor. But I'm curious to see what he says more after the visit. I think right now going into it, I don't get the read they're going to be a serious threat, but, who knows coming out of that trip.
Tim, enjoy your week. We'll check in with you again next week and bump into you at Big Ten Media Days as well. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Of course. See y'all later.
All right, there he is, Tim Verghese, inside NebraskaRivals.com. Tim always gives us 2 segments, bless his heart. Tiger Shark Diver, when we were talking a little bit about John Butler in Buffalo, Tiger Shark lets us know that is the home of chicken wings, where you will get beat to a pulp if you go ranch instead of blue cheese.
Buffalo wings from Buffalo. Wow.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
You do. Absolutely. We'll wind down this first hour. Coach McBride, a Monday with Charlie, 15 minutes away at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you one final time this hour. Get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity Radio. Can find us and follow us. Do so on Twitter as well, at HVarsity Radio, at Herbal Essence, at Schmidt_radio. So the real Matthew, when we talk about smoking steak, to veer off the football train for a moment, real Matthew smokes his steak at 180 until the internal temp gets to 120. Then he reverse sears it about 125, 130. This came up because of Saturday's show. Me and Kranak had dinner with Coach BP, and he has, I don't know what configuration it is. It's not a Traeger, but it's a Traeger-like smoker, right? Now I have one of those too. I mean, it's been too long. It's been covered up too long. I haven't done any ribs this summer, but the bone-in ribeye, he did, I think he set it at 180 for a little bit, to your point, real Matthew. And then he cranked it up to 220, and I think it was a total of 225. So mine was probably more little heavier than medium rare, which is how I usually do it, but it didn't matter. It was incredible. Then whatever seasoning homeboy put on it, He's going to go through his seasoning cupboard and walk off with it, but I heard a gun click. Kidding. But it was just tremendous. He had the compassion to ask me, well, if it's too leathery, and it wasn't. It was tender. Didn't need a knife. If you need sauce, let me know.
Oh.
Right? I'm like, brother, I'll never, ever use sauce.
I don't want to go to
steak.
hell, actually.
Right?
Like,
there are things that happen to people who use sauce on their steak.
Yeah, you got to answer those questions at the pearly gates is all I'm saying.
That's well put. It's well put.
The thing I'll say, though, the smoked steak, fantastic. Have done it before. It's lovely.
So about 25, 30 minutes, right?
25, 30 minutes. If you have the thermometer, that really helps to get the internal temperature just right. So I like to use my internal. I don't probe it. I'm not the type of guy that leaves it in there.
I don't have a.
That takes science out of it.
I'm glad you're not a prober.
But gonna let that one lie. Give yourself like one of those instant read thermometers though, and like just go check it. Once it's somewhere in that like 115 to 125 range, you pull it off. Now here's the secret. You seen the charcoal chimneys?
Hmm?
You use it to get your charcoal hot fast. You can cook on it too.
Aha.
Put your grate right on top, steak right on top of the chimney. It'll give you the quickest, hottest sear of your life. You have to be careful with it because it will leave your steak black if you leave it on there too long.
It's okay.
And if you like that, you like that. But throw it on there, get you the nice quick sear, fast, hot, beautiful crispy edges, wall-to-wall pink. And then to top it all off, a little bit of garlic butter.
You put a little butter on top. That's the other thing I learned. BP's smoked steak method, and then Jaybird's brother, Jeff Erickson, out in Hayes Center, he marinated the steaks, but he did this new cooking method where it's 2 minutes, rest for 5.
I've seen that one.
2 minutes, rest for 5. Amazing.
Get that wall-to-wall pink with that one.
Life-changing. Turned into a smoked steak / grilled steak barbecue trip as much as golf. Coach McBride's on the way. Hour 2 up. Coming.
This is Christian Peter. I'm sorry, but the stories I have about Charlie are not appropriate for the public.
The right case of the Mondays. It's Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, on Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel will check in with Coach McBride here in a moment. Jay Moore, Blackshirt Husker NFL, are also with us here around 5:25. So you have SEC Media Days going in this desert of sports. The second week of July, that's all right. There's been some pins pulled on Coach Prime from Paul Feinbaum. We'll get there in a minute. Also, Paul Feinbaum and Lincoln Riley. The word disaster, when you think of the term and the imagery in your mind with disaster, it's I don't know. I guess underwhelming is a better word. So I think Coach said try call it again. Maybe. I don't know. He sent an audio message, so we'll try dialing Coach back up. 489-1240, 489-1240. The off-topic topic for your Monday when it comes to steak. It's going to be 1 billion degrees outside, so stay cool around the grill, but what's worse, is it somebody that does their steak well done? Eric brought this up. We got to give Eric a shout out on the stream. Is it sauce or well done? Somebody who uses sauce on their steak or somebody that does their steak well done? I've got a couple folks I know that are more medium with how they do their steaks. Medium rare, but well done. Yeah, I just can't do it. Can't do it, and if you do it that way, hey, I hope you enjoy. If you got to fire up the A1 or 57, all good for you, each to their own, but you can keep that A1. If you need sauce and you're a well done steak eater, you can just enjoy.
So all the sauce you need. Garlic butter with some rosemary, some thyme.
There you go.
If you're feeling a little dangerous, maybe a little MSG in there.
Something. We welcome in Mr. Blackshirt on Monday with Charlie at Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, back from vacation, refreshed, ready to go, had a lot of steak. How do you eat your steak, Coach McBride?
No, I'm an old-fashioned medium rare guy.
Oh, there we go. Do you use sauce or do you throw the sauce out?
Oh, you don't want to ruin the steak.
Hey!
See, you're good. You're good. I love it.
You passed the test.
Yes. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Well, I want to get your thoughts, Coach McBride, first on John Butler coming from the NFL to Nebraska to lead Nebraska's secondary. It's been a week since I talked with you, so wanted to get your feedback. His resume is impressive. It sounds like he's doing pretty good work connecting with the current kids and reaching out to some new guys on the recruiting trail.
Well, that's the important thing right away. I mean, you got a season coming up, and the fact that he gets along with the kids good. A lot of times when you do that, you're probably a lot better coach. You got kids paying attention and things like that. His background is such that they'll pay attention. I think and that's a credit to him. I mean, it's he's been through most of it, and and he probably has some added tricks that they haven't had before.
Sure.
And so it's and a lot of times they'll come in and if they can do something in the secondary that fits the defense that they're running, it makes a big difference, because there's nothing better than to change a little bit, in your defense each year, to do something like, when just like this guy's in defenses and all kinds of little things that you can do that he probably has some knowledge of.
Coach, another thing that's come to light is Nebraska hiring a senior football assistant, Coach Jamar Mosey. Spent time down at Central Florida, but before that from Lee Summit North. You know the Kansas City region well. I think your player John Garrison that was so big in Lincoln. He's a Kansas City guy, and Nebraska's had success in Kansas City, but speak, if you can, to the importance of really honing in on that region, especially with how well Missouri is doing right now on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, we've been able to go down there and probably get a couple of times get the best player in the state. Kids like Jeff Smith down at Wichita that came years ago that we had, and it's a good area to be associated with. There's a lot of good football players down there, and some of them don't get recognized for some reason or another. I don't know. I don't know why, but I think you're going to run into Kansas and Kansas State naturally, because they'll crash the area. But I remember going to down to, I think, Oak Grove. It was the little town that Tom Banderas and guys like that. They're good football players. Around that area. And one of the kids we had was interesting. We had a young man. I don't remember, exactly how it all worked out, but he didn't stay because his dad was killed.
Oh, sorry.
And they had a farm, and he had to go back to farming. So we kind of lost one there, but that's the kind of thing that happens, I guess, every once in a while. And so there's been a lot of kids come out of Kansas City. I mean, you can go back, and St. Louis is the same way.
Charlie McBride with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, another Black Shirt Monday with Coach. And Coach, you mentioned a name there, Tom Banderas. Tom Banderas was my middle school football coach. I'm wondering how much of his coaching he got from you. He liked to yell.
Tom was a good athlete all the way around. He's a good basketball player. Of course, he doesn't look like one exactly, but he did more. He looked more like a basketball player in the old days than he does now, probably. But Tom was a guy that was really a hard worker, and you could depend on him. That's the one thing about him. You always knew that he was going to do a good job for you. And and it's par for the course that you'll find a good player down there that he'll be interested in Nebraska because of the distance. Number one is really a good thing. A lot of times, I went down there, and sometimes the closeness of Lawrence, Kansas, isn't something the kids want to have. They want to be a little farther away from home, but yet close enough where they can get home. Mm-hmm. And Nebraska fits that, and so they can't go home every weekend or whatever it is like you could if you were at Lawrence or maybe even Manhattan and so forth. So it's a good thing because there's a lot of good features that Nebraska has, and most of it, of course, is the football program.
Charlie McBride is with us. It's a Monday with Charlie. It's Hail Varsity Radio. Sad news, Coach, with Monty Kiffin passing away last week, and I know Monty was in Lincoln before he went off to Arkansas, and then of course his time in the NFL. But how much interaction or connection did you have with Monty?
A lot.
Yeah.
Well, we spent a lot of time with him. When Monty came to town, he would always come by, and we'd spend some time on the blackboard with him. And he put a lot of things, in our minds, and a lot of things that you think about. And we did some things with the secondary that Monty recommended that we do, and some things that were easy to put in and stuff like that. But that guy was as loyal as you can find a person toward the University of Nebraska. I mean, of course, he played here and has a lot of connections here. But he was as good a person as there was. I mean, he never turned you down. We'd go down, and see him. I remember George Darlington and I had go down a couple times down to Tampa and spend some time with him down there and with some of their coaches. And it was always, never no. It was always, come on ahead, let's go. And he was willing to help us at any move we could make. He was willing to, his help. And I'm sure that, he was that way with his kids. And I know that his son really, really appreciated all that he learned from him.
Coach, as a football mind, what made Coach Kiffin so special? He's a guy that had stops everywhere, college, the NFL. I mean, you think about his influence on the Tampa 2 defense. That was one of the most dominant defenses of the early 2000s down in Tampa Bay. What made him as a football mind so special in your eyes?
Well, I think the one thing is Monty could wear a blackboard out. I mean, he wasn't afraid to try things, to do something that was new or put something in that was new, and he was just with the players. I mean, you talk about liking the guy who you're playing for. Monty was that guy, and you love playing for the guy. That's a big plus. I think for any coaches, kids come out of the woodwork sometimes when they think of their about their coach, and they a lot of times they. I don't like the word they'll play for him, but they play for him. They don't want to let him down and things like that. And I think that was one of the things that Monty had. Plus, he had your attention all the time, and and he was a listener too. That's probably one of the big things. I mean, anytime we went down and talked to him, boy, he wanted to know what we're doing. It wasn't always a one-way street with him. And, it wasn't like I know everything and you know nothing. He didn't. That wasn't the way he was. He wanted to find out everything you knew. That maybe one of those things that helped them.
Charlie McBride, some thoughts on Monty Kiffin with us here at Hail Varsity Radio, and powered by Cornhead Lager. Thank you for sharing some of your insight with Monty. And I interviewed him once. This is probably 15 or 20 years ago. He might have been with, it might have been with USC, because I know he would go where Lane was at. Might have been in the NFL too. It might have been 06, 07, so maybe not quite 20 years, but just a real pleasant dude, and was always super proud of being from Lexington. You know it, Coach McBride, proud of being a Lexington, Nebraska guy.
That's right. That's the one thing about, Monty was always proud of that. And, the thing is he was always proud of Nebraska. Wherever he went, he was a representative. No matter how many years he was or where he was, he was a Husker through and through.
Mm-hmm. Coach, as we wind down, what's the week look like for you? You going to get out on the lake, a little fishing? How are you? How's the weather?
Well, I got my boys here, and my youngest one and two of his kids, so we get a lot of work done around here that has to be done. That's one thing. And, last night we had a bad experience. We had the 911 shot. The one got bit by a bee in bed.
Oh, no.
And
I'm sorry.
He's allergic to, and he's allergic to them. And so, we had to get it because he swelled up like and still working at getting rid of it. And of course, they got an EpiPen. I have one, but the guy didn't want to use it when he got here, the 911 guy, because he wasn't really sure where that it was that,
Sure.
because they couldn't find where the bite was. Mm-hmm. But they found out that actually the thing bit him when he was in bed. It got in the house somehow. So those kind of, those yellow jackets, boy, they bite you, and they don't fool around with you, no matter whether you're allergic to them or not. So that woke us all up pretty good. and it was, it's one of those things that gets exciting. Of course, around McBride's, we're not really the calmest group of people there.
Wow. Well, we had some excitement last night. Yeah, you did. And everyone's pitching in to help and just stay healthy is what we're wanting.
And, Coach, at least you're self-aware.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, my dad always said you got to punish your body and show it who's boss.
I love that.
That's pretty good. Coach, we'll holler at you next Monday. We're gearing up for Indianapolis for Big Ten Media Days next week, so season's almost here. Almost here.
Yeah, well, that makes it even more exciting when they come around. And I remember when we were playing and we were coaching, when those guys came around, it was time, and that's the fun part about it.
It is. Coach, best to your family. We'll talk to you next Monday, bud.
Okay, thanks for having me. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep, bye now.
Good to hear from Coach McBride. Awesome thoughts from him, and we'll keep it going. Jay Moore with us. Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore, part of Big Red Wrap-Up at Jay Moore 44. Jay Bird, it's been a while. Good to spend some time, and you serve the coldest beer poolside, my friend. How you doing?
I take pride in that. Those poolside beers ain't nothing better than a fresh, ice cold one. So it was good to see you on the 4th. But yeah, it's been good. July's half over. It's we're getting closer and closer to football season. That's what I know.
I know. We are under 50 days, and just so we know, the visual image of me standing next to Jay Moore topless just made everybody at the pool all that much more happy on the 4th.
You're looking good, though. You know, you're looking good. Hey, everything is, you know, it's perspective, right?
Jay's like, Schmidt, are you an A cup now? Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Schmidt, not everyone's got the genes of a D1 athlete. We're gonna blame genetics here.
Well, that's all good, but hey, it was incredible. I'm driving out with my other buddy Jay Bird to central and western Nebraska, and what do I hear among our Hail Varsity affiliates? But it's Elijah asking Jay Moore about, dude, do you know anyone who was dumb enough to get hurt playing golf? That was how the second part of my vacation was triggered a little bit. But Bird, just so you know, I've played the best golf of my life, and you're like, what's that mean? You played a few rounds with me, but shot a 93. Didn't shoot that at Wild Horse, but I still was on in regulation. Those greens are murder. You sneeze and it's 80 feet past the hole, bud.
Yeah, it's
just
Wild
rough.
Horse is one of my favorites, man. Those greens are so good. That golf course is such a, I don't know if it's so much of a hidden gem for us Nebraska golfers, because everyone has to, if you haven't, it's like you got to take depending where you're coming from Lincoln, 2 hours and 45 minutes, 3-hour drive to Gothenburg, and it's one of the best golf courses you'll ever play. But it's definitely a hidden gem, and yeah, the greens are just perfect, and they're firm and they're fast, and you get on the wrong side of the slope, and it's just good luck. You probably need to grab your a wedge because you're chipping instead of after you just putted it off the green.
It's a blindfold and cigarette, Elijah and Jay. That's how it was. That's how it went. But it was awesome.
I'm surprised to hear though that with no ankle mobility in a boot, you're playing the best golf of your life.
It's old man, just slow swing, contact, 170 off the box. Take a hybrid, hit another 100.5, chip on, and then pray for fair greens, Jay and Elijah.
Jay, what does that tell you? Does that mean we have to take a crowbar to Schmitty's knees every single time he's going golfing?
You were right the first time.
It's like the Michael Jordan flu game, right? Your expectations kind of lower, right? And you just do it. You just go out there and do what you got, and sometimes it's good enough, and you surprise yourself.
You have the I don't give a F, I'm on vacation, and let's let it roll. Let's dive into some football thoughts. A lot of lists coming out. The countdown is on, as we talked about a little bit, and I enjoy the indispensable discussion parts, as you have your top 15, your top 10. Some of the Nebraska sites are into that. Jay, if you had to pick one guy on offense that you can't lose or has to perform, one guy on defense that you can't lose, has to perform, who are your top two picks?
Oh, man. That is a really good question. I mean, the way my mind, and you guys know me well enough, I'm going to the O-line and D-lines. I'm going to guys that honestly are at the center of everything. I'm probably saying Ben Scott at center and Nash Hutchmacher at nose guard. I think those guys are so important to, obviously, the offense. You have Ben Scott, who's come in from, was a transfer from Arizona State and came in, and he kind of gives them a hard edge. And the center is a very important position. He's kind of the QB offensive line, giving calls. So I think that's a very integral spot. And then with Nash, he's so versatile and has gotten so good at what he does. He can just in that 3-3-5. I mean, he can. It takes a couple guys designated to him to try to get accomplished what the offense wants, and that just makes your whole defense better when so many bodies got to go towards him to try to defeat him. If you don't, he's going to win. So I think those two guys, just off the top of my head, are huge, very, very, very important to the success of this team. And you got a center, and obviously he's touching the ball every play and getting it to who he thinks can be Dylan. And then Nash is just that cog of that guy in the defense that can play really all across the line, but he's just his ability to play over center, play over guard, move, create pressure from the A gaps to the B gaps, whatever it may be. I'm thinking those two guys right off the top of my head are very. You don't want to lose them. Now there's some other guys too. I mean, you can go down. There's a bunch of guys, but I think those two guys right there are very, very key to how this season goes for the Nebraska football team.
Jay, in your mind, when you discuss kind of the importance of the lines, one of the things I think Nebraska really needs to get fixed this year, and it's not a bold or controversial opinion by any means, but it's the turnover differential. And I want to get your thoughts on how the turnover differential kind of starts with your line of scrimmage, both protecting the quarterback and getting after the quarterback, both of those roles and their importance of limiting turnovers and being able to generate turnovers as a defense.
Yeah, honestly, the defense did an okay job creating turnovers. What the defense did so well last year was when the offense turned it over deep in their own territory, they did an awesome job of holding teams at 3 points or to no points at all. But I think when you look at the offensive side of things, your quarterback situation. With quarterback play last year, Harburg and Sims, it wasn't laziness. It wasn't bad. It was just a mix of everything. I think you had some issues at offensive line still. You had inconsistencies at the running back position. You had inconsistencies at the wide receiver position with injuries. So once this kind of all gets better, and it all starts up the offensive line, and I think you just get your guys. Everybody that plays is going to play this year. Played a bunch last year. A lot of guys have played for going into their 6 years. So I think you get that better. You get a half a second, another second protection in the pocket. You establish a run game. And then that way you don't have to try to do anything too crazy. I think turnovers also come from what you try to do at the QB spot when you try to have a mobile quarterback and utilize him like a Sims and a Harburg were last year in the QB run game. You're gonna have some fumbles. Just remember all those teams back in the day with Osborne and Solis, and you're gonna fumble it when you're pitching it all over the place, running options, and in the QB run game, those are gonna happen. So I don't foresee that happening with Dylan. I think it's gonna be more pro style. They're not going to use him in the zone read option, whatever it may be. So, but better offensive line play. QB obviously taking care of the football and just having a consistent run game, and obviously keeping your tight ends and your wide receivers healthy so they can develop timing and everyone's on the same page and not constantly trying to figure out, trying to gain chemistry and timing with a new guy here, a new guy there. Kind of tweaking game plans and what you want to do offensively throughout the season because you've had so many injuries. So that's for the offense. But defensively, again, winning up front, stopping the run, getting teams in second and third in not manageable, but what they're going to do, right? They're against the chains. They're in obviously passing down situations. So you can dial up pressures. You can get creative in your sub packages and within that 3-3-5. You can create more turnovers on the back end with interceptions. You can create more turnovers by blitzes and getting the quarterback and sack fumbles, tip balls, whatever it is. But the defense, obviously, they'd want to have more turnovers last year created, but it didn't. But they still played. They still have a hell of a season. It should be just as good this year, but it really just solely relies on the offense. They have to take a better care of the football. Last year, it was a hot mess last year. But I think just in general, with the O-line being the strength of the offense, better quarterback play, better play calling in certain situations, establishing a run game, and hopefully wide receivers on the edge stay healthy. I think that should at least, cutting down in half would be, shouldn't take too much, because, that's just how many we had last year.
Good work from Jay Moore, Blackshirt Husker NFLer, Big Red wrap-up, and we'll have more with Jay Moore. Conversation continues with old Jay Bird. Good to have him back. Good to hear back from him, and love our Blackshirt Hour. Can get the podcast, and you're invited to do so. Check it out. Give us a review, good, bad, or ugly. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play is where you can download. But also interested in your feedback, your thoughts, good, bad, or ugly. We'll take the commentary. Also, subscribe and like to the Hail Varsity YouTube channel and check that out. Not only our show, but check out, of course, Hurrdat Sports in the morning, 7 to 10. Check those folks out. Elijah, you're pulling double duty a couple of times this week with Ravi, which is great. Damon getting locked in for football season again. And find us on Twitter at H Varsity Radio. Tomorrow we should be able to stream the show on Twitter /X for our Twitter audience. So there you go. Reminder to buckle up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. So there are things to get more involved with. Turnover is a big thing, right, with this Blackshirt defense. See if they can make that jump, and you feel pretty good. You feel pretty good about what they've got coming back with 9 starters. Add into it some plus takeaways. That's a good thing. More with Jay on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Jay Moore's with us, Blackshirt Husker NFLer. It's Hail Varsity Radio, our Blackshirt Hour. Jay, Nick Saban said something interesting today at SEC Media Days in reference to Oklahoma and Texas, and he talked about just the consistency on Saturday, and that's what every coach strives for, but also the excellence you're going to see. And Saban went back to one of the years that they won it. They had 9 Saturdays, 9 of their 12 regular season games where they played a ranked team, and I think 4 or 5 of those were on the road. So you got to bring it, and you got to bring it every Saturday, and it's going to be more so that way when you look at the Big Ten and its expansion. What, in your opinion, makes it so difficult for a team to be good every Saturday? Why is consistency an issue when you only get one game a week to gear up for?
Well, football's such a different game than obviously baseball and basketball or hockey, when you have multiple games throughout the week. It takes a toll on your body. It's an outside game. Weather plays a huge factor for the most part. Obviously, I know there's teams that have inside stadiums, but weather can definitely a factor. You have greater, the injury rate is so much higher, so that can cause inconsistencies. In college football, obviously, there's an age difference. So depending on, is your team young? Are they old? Older teams should not have as many inconsistencies. Older teams should know how to practice well, take care of their bodies, should know the game plan, should know the playbook better. You have younger teams. Hey, your players can get overwhelmed. Being a Division I athlete is a full-time job, and you still got to go to school and do well in school. So your time is very minimal. So there's a lot to it, but the great ones, they just attack the little things really, really well. To do the big things well, you have to do the little things well first, and it's just as easy as showing up on time, not being late, doing what you're asked to do, just trying to get 1% better every day. That's how you don't get overwhelmed. That's how you got to approach each week the same. When you play, Northern Iowa needs to be the same approach as playing USC, right? So it's a maturity thing, and it's hard when you're dealing with young kids in college football. It's tough. That's where I would generally say younger teams are the most inconsistent ones, just because it's hard. They just don't know how to approach it yet. You always you can approach it like a pro, right? And it just takes some time to learn that and kind of develop your own system and trust it, and then trust what the coaches are trying to tell you as well. To get the job done. So it's just not as easy as saying it's one thing, but it's a lot, and it's just a different game. But I usually, if there was one thing, I'd say younger teams just struggle with inconsistencies just because of the maturity factor.
It's Jay Moore with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jay, as we continue this discussion about consistency and about that week-to-week maturity, I want to get your thoughts. We learned last week the 3 guys Nebraska's sending off to Big Ten Media Days, 3 leaders on this team, Isaac Gifford, Ben Scott, and Ty Robinson. Whenever you look at those 3 guys, what do you think Nebraska needs from them from a leadership point of view? And really not just those 3 guys, because great teams don't just have a couple of leaders. They have leaders all over the field.
Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts on what Nebraska needs, given what point on the rebuild that they're in. What do they need from a leadership point of view this season?
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of talked about it. You got to have consistency. You got to have consistency from all 3 of them. They can't be too high. They can't be too low. They need to stay healthy because you need those guys around. Those guys have played a lot of football. I mean, Ty and Isaac have been here for a while now. So you need them available. And like I said, the consistency is huge. You got to approach everything the same. Doesn't matter who you're playing. Doesn't matter what day of the week it is. Everything is the same, right? Obviously, times are different times of practices, whatever it is, but you approach it the same each and every week. And that's how you really kind of turn the page and get better is, no matter what, you have your routines. This is how you're going to go about it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to help, and I'm going to step up and help young guys if they need it. I'm going to do certain things. I'm going to take care of my body certain ways. And whether it's vocal, I don't know all of them personally, but you don't have to be a vocally rah-rah, yell type of leader. Some of your best ones are lead by example, but then when you speak, they mean it and they better listen. And you do that. And the good leaders that are like that, you can't do that and not be consistent. If you're late, if you're not doing the right things, you're not taking care of your body, you're just a little careless. When you speak, it's not gonna go through. Kids aren't gonna buy into it. It's like, well, why am I listening to you? You were late for a lift. Things like that. So obviously it doesn't happen because they wouldn't be in that situation. But you have to you got to approach everything the same way and at a very fine detail, and just every day you got to be as consistent and on point as possible. So I imagine you'll get that from those 3 plus the same from Nash and a Fedoni and a Ben Hart and some other players on this roster. But congrats to those 3 for being named. That's a cool thing to experience, and I'm guessing I can't remember how they did captains last year, if it was by game or by season, but those are 3 guys that are going to be walking out of the tunnel ahead of everyone to do the coin toss as well.
Jay, if you were to put your leadership hat on here as we wind it down, put your leadership hat on, take yourself back to those days whenever you were a leader on the defense. What would you say to a teammate that right before the season broke their ankle on the golf course by letting their foot hang out the golf cart?
Well,
you'd call him a dumbass.
Yeah, it's like I said last week. I do it all the time. You got to stop doing it. It's a bad habit. Everyone does it.
See?
No, that'd be a tough one. That's a tough break.
Pun intended?
Yeah, pun intended. Definitely pun intended. So, yeah, just hope. Yeah, I don't know how you'd handle that one. You'd probably say, you'd call him a dumbass, and all right, hopefully heal up quick because we need you out there, right?
And you're not driving.
Right.
You're riding shotgun and you're buying the beers. Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore. Big Red wrap-up. Another season with Jay Bird. Can catch him as Husker football gets cranked up. Follow him on Twitter at JMoore44. Jay, we'll talk again, bud. Good to spend some time. Thanks for a few minutes.
Yeah. Yep, you got it. Thanks, boys.
Appreciate you, Jay. As good to run him down. Tomorrow's show, pretty loaded up. We'll check in with Michael Bruntz. Mitch Sherman sighting, as Mitch will release the Fury. Mitch with The Athletic. And then a Phil Steele sighting. Aha! Excited to talk some Big Red football and get Phil's take. We know what he thinks of the Big Red, but Phil's so in-depth and detailed, it'll be pretty good. Tiger Shark Diver says, I'm not allowed ever to drive golf carts. Period. End of discussion. I unwrapped my foot here between commercials and asked Elijah to see what he thought. And he's like, well, we've had certain folks on the stream asking for feet pics for a long time.
You obliged.
I just made it happen.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Well, good to hear from Todd. I've missed Todd, and Todd says I'm something in a boot.
You might need to explain that one to me off the air.
It's a movie, Todd.
You might need to explain that one to me off the air.
Yeah, we'll do that. But Todd, good to have you. So I was poolside with Uncle Nate, having to get a Sunday beer in yesterday. It was great. It was hot. And good therapy, Elijah. That's the story we're going to go with. But what a finish, what a flurry with England and Spain.
Well, that was great. You see Copa America?
Wasn't that the same thing or no?
It was great. What was more entertaining was going down in Miami.
Sorry. I was looking at the Euro tourney where
the Euros were great.
You had two headers that were deflected in the second to last minute of extended time.
Look at you watching soccer.
Well, it was the only thing on, bro, and I had no idea. I didn't want to bother the bartenders for the remote.
It was a great game. I'm glad you got to see it because I was locked in with that all afternoon. That was a fantastic game. And if anyone out there got to see that, I am happy for you. You got to see a great soccer game. England trying to equalize it late, and you had Olmo clearing it off the line with his head. Fantastic. But then in Copa America, you had the game get delayed by an hour and 15 minutes because Colombian fans, and Colombia is a team that's always had a great international team, but they've never quite been able to capitalize on that and like turn it into actual tournament success. They did it this year. They made it to the Copa America final. And what their fans started doing was finding the most creative ways I've ever seen to break into Hard Rock Stadium down in Miami. They were hopping fences. They were crawling through air ducts. Like, not even kidding. You seen this video?
I saw folks climbing.
Yeah, no, they were climbing into air ducts and crawling through air ducts in the stadium to get in. Like, it reached the point where people would, like, they were paying stupid money for tickets. They got in with their tickets, and they reached their seat, and there was just some family sitting there. And Screw's like, we don't know what to do. The stadium was over capacity. Super, super entertaining from an outsider's perspective, not having to deal with all that. I kind of feel bad for the security down there. At one point, the security just opened up the gates and said, everyone in. We don't care. We can't deal with this anymore. It was an absolute mess, but it led to a great environment at the game yesterday. I don't think Miami's seen that many fans in their stadium since ever.
That's fair.
But it kind of got me wondering, like, are there any Husker games in history that you think, and football has a different connotation in America. It's more of a family event than some South American see soccer. Were there any Husker games back in the day where Husker fans were trying to break in ever?
I think, folks, well, you were part of the crew that never left, but there was a stream of folks to find their red Solo Cup at halftime of the Nebraska-Ohio State game in 2011 because it was a Carlos Hyde, Braxton Miller beat down to epic proportions. And then Levante David put his Superman cape on and flipped the whole tenor. Nebraska also knocked out Braxton Miller. Again, Levante David, come on down. And you had, God, what was the kid's name? He's losing his hair, clearly.
Bowserman.
Yeah. Bowserman threw the two passes that Stanley Jean-Baptiste actually caught in his career in Nebraska. Well, bless his heart, second-round pick, corner.
You got paid for it.
Yeah.
They were playing $500, though, in that Ohio State game at the end.
Yes, they were. So, yeah. That's the only time folks are streaming back in to see the finish because they all bolted for alcohol and help at halftime. Tomorrow, back with you at 4 on Hail Varsity. Thanks for tuning in. Powered by Cornhead Lager.